If you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
Sorry about that, my friends. I turned on the microphone channel and the actual microphone was not turned on. So silly, silly, silly me. Today should be a fun day. It does appear that we have a couple people waiting for the stream today, which is nice to see. I will offer this very, very small caveat going forward this morning that I did call the HVAC guy, and if I get a message that he's on his way, then I might have to end the stream today. So, haven't heard back from them yet. I am in the queue, and unfortunately, since late yesterday afternoon, I should say, the furnace is not putting out heat. So, fortunately, we've got 3 space heaters that are pretty heavy duty. In just such an emergency, we are okay. All right, so today is going to be, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to give you the easy peasy tip right out of the gate here, so that if you're here for that, you can know the secret. What the heck are you talking about, Dave? Well, one of the things I've said in recent live streams, let me open Blender 2.79. One of the things that has kept me on this is interesting. You can, if you have Blender 2.8 running, 2.79 will not run. At least on my system, it'll complain that there's another instance of Blender running. If you do it in reverse, it works. So if I run Blender 2.79 and then I run Blender 2.81, there we go. Okay, so what we're doing is we're trying to figure out a pathway, just to give you some context here, from Blender 2.79 through to 2.8 forward, eventually probably landing on 2.93, and then maybe making our way to version 3. But the big selling point for me that has kept me anchored in Blender 2.79 is simply this. I hit the D key. At all times I'm in edit mode, so if I hit escape, I can lasso, do sculpting. I can hit the E key and do sculpting, hit the D key, I'm immediately drawing again. Everything's completely fluid in the whole process. Well, it turns out, I've really just needed to do the work of figuring this out, but if it wasn't for that smooth flow, I'd be more apt to spend more time finding my way through Blender 2.81 and then working my way up to 2.93 and all the rest. Well, it turned out that the secret is stupidly simple. In Blender, you've got these menus for the different modes. Just put your right mouse over them, and well, if there wasn't a shortcut, it would say change the shortcut. So let me find one that doesn't have a shortcut, like object mode, assign a shortcut. And if you click that, you can press any key and it'll assign a shortcut to it. So for me, what that meant was, and let me check one thing here, by the way. Yeah, it looks like I have a rogue stroke in my default. So what I'm going to do is go File, Defaults. Whenever you change your startup file, in other words, the way you want Blender to look and work and operate when you first open it, you just go to the Defaults menu and save your startup file. Okay, so here's the secret. It turns out that by just setting those hotkeys, I have exactly what I've been saying I wanted. I can be drawing, and then at any time I just hit the E key, and I'm in sculpt mode. D key, I'm back to drawing. And if I hit tab, I can hit control, lasso, and as you can see, the O key, of course, invokes the proportional editing tool. And there it is. I mean, that is pretty much literally all I needed to say, okay, fine. I can pretty much work my way around in use Blender 2.81. Now, which I've been using Blender 2.8 for a couple of years, actually, ever since it came out. But the issues with the fill tool and whatnot. The reason to migrate eventually to 293 is mainly because of that, because of the rotate the canvas in Blender. I'll tell you what, Goswami, let's see. This works in 2.79. I have no idea if it works in version 2.8 plus, but it probably does. So here's what you do. For me, I hit the 1 key to go to front view, and then if I recall correctly, it's Control Shift mouse wheel. And whoops, didn't mean to do that. Let's do Control Alt mouse wheel. No. Okay, I'm gonna hit the 9 key, and that does flip me around. So I would say for me, at this point, that does not work. Let me look. I'm going to jump into 2.79 and make sure. Good morning, Maria, by the way. Okay, so in 2.79, this doesn't actually come up as much as you might think, but there it is. So if I hit the 1 key and I draw, okay, I can. It was actually Control Shift. I'm sorry. So it's Control Shift that rotates around the well, I should say the Z-axis, because for most people this would be the Z-axis. But it's a little confusing because I have Blender set up so that we are the depth is actually the Y-axis. So let's go to the top view and see what happens if we hit Shift Control mouse wheel. It's the same thing, so it doesn't matter what view you're in. So in 2.79, Control Shift mouse wheel rotates around. I would say, how do you do the same thing in 2.8 or higher? You know, just I would look it up, Google it. You come on the live stream and tell me, because that definitely is a useful bit of information. So there's my drawing, Control Shift, and mouse wheel does not do anything. So, unfortunately, that's one of the things I've found that maybe doesn't work so well. Everything else about my workflow in 2.81 is about the same. I can hit the 1 key on my numpad to go to front view. The 9 key flips the canvas for me. But if you hit the 6 or the 4 key, obviously, as you can see here, you're rotating in 3D space, which really doesn't help much. 2 and 8. So my suspicion is, let's try this. Let's go to the front view again, but let's go to the top view and see what happens. Okay, if you're absolutely determined to have that kind of rotation and you don't mind using your numpad keys, then just do your drawing in top view instead of the front view, because that gives you the result you were after right there. Okay? You know, for just rotating. As you can see, there will be some, you really need to set up your startup file. If that's important to you and you're going to be using it a lot, set up your startup file so that when you enter Blender, the camera would be actually up here pointing down. And then that would give you the ability to do your and the 7 key goes into top view. Now if you have the 7 key pressed and you hit 9, does it go, does it flip it? I think it does. It's hard to see. The only way we can test that is to go into object mode. Let's hit double R and flip this like that. So now we're looking down, as you can see here. We're looking down on our drawing. Okay, so now if I hit the 9 key, see, yeah, it flips it upside down. It doesn't flip it left to right. So your mileage may vary. You might have to fiddle around with that one. For me, my quest would be that I'm going to figure out how to be in front view and get the canvas to just rotate around this axis the way it does in 279. I'm sure there's a way, and it's probably stupidly simple. I just don't know what the secret is. So, all right. Maria, you're so sweet and kind. Always helpful. Okay, so anyway, the bottom line in terms of the big secret, the big reveal was that the idea that you can, any of the menus, you can right mouse click on them, and set a hotkey. And as I said, it seemed to work just fine for me. So, as far as the rotation thing goes, let me see. From this view, if I click on this, it grabs the widget. This does not appear to lock it. Okay, so this is a little misleading for me. Well, maybe this is it. No? So it doesn't matter which, like you can see the little widgets light up. And it tells you what it corresponds to in terms of the shortcut keys. But as far as rotating around the y-axis, I can't figure that one out right now. So anyway, okay, so having said that, we're going to be making the transition back to Blender here. The mindset is essentially this. If I have the ability to, let's say, migrate away from Krita, then I'm probably going to do so. You know, I love Krita. It's a great paint program. But ultimately, for cranking out animation, I just need the features that I need. And in Blender 2.8 Plus, there are things about the grease pencil in terms of being able to add modifiers to blur a layer, for example. The blending modes, there's a lot of blending modes on your layers. There's a lot of things with Blender with the grease pencil that would be probably just fine even for doing background paintings. And so you know, on the post-production side, when you're, you know, adding a final vignette to a scene, for example, you know, so you want to have sort of a blurred, you know, maybe just a blurred airbrush thing around the corners that you sort of bake in for just, you know, dialing in the color in a scene. With Blender, that gets a little more complicated for two reasons. Number one, if you're going to use blending modes the way you would in Krita to do that, you would have to have the layer with the vignette in the same grease pencil object. But yet, it would often be the case that you would want to have that effect applied to your whole scene, and your characters and backgrounds and stuff might be in separate grease pencil objects. So now you're adding power and flexibility in exchange for additional housekeeping, which would mean setting everything up in the compositor. The thing is, you can do it, and it's like it's all doable. It's just a question of, you know, doing all that extra housekeeping. And that is perennially the trade-off. With Krita, we're talking about a really rapid, fluid workflow that has some bizarre idiosyncrasies that I complain about all the time, but yet at the end of the day, I'm actually able to get pretty good work done in Krita, right? So for that reason, I've stuck with Krita. But if I could migrate away from Krita to Blender 2.8 Plus, which kind of sews up all the common functionality between 2.79 and Krita, for me, that's probably what's going to wind up happening. And for what it's worth, fans, the same thing is true with Tahoma. You know, most of what you would probably ever want to do in the animation space, you can accomplish in any one of the three programs, Tahoma or OpenTunes, Krita or Blender. But you have to do kind of what I did this morning with Blender 2.81, which is go ahead, spend a little time in the docs, learn the program, find out what the possibilities are, maybe find out what some of the gotchas are. Okay, before I go any further, since we're hitting the half-hour point, I want to transition over here and say something about subscribers and crowdfunding and all the rest. So I want to just give you guys the quick lowdown here. Number one, I do have a Patreon. Okay, the links for this is in the description of the video, but I just want to say a couple things about this. Patreon, first of all, people don't do this. Don't certainly, if you're going to do anything for me with Patreon, do $3 per month. Do the least possible. I have not customized this. There isn't much in the way of rewards, But what I did want to say is, I mentioned this a couple nights ago, is that if you have a scene from an anime or a cartoon or anything that you either find challenging, where you're having a difficult time saying, geez, how did they do that? Okay? Either that, or maybe you do have some ideas about how something might be done in your favorite cartoon or anime or whatever, but you would find it inspiring and empowering to actually see somebody do it and work through the problems that are involved in conquering that particular challenge. If that's what you want, anybody that does the $3 per month thing on Patreon, so effectively you're saying, hey Dave, I'm going to support you for, what is that, $36 a year. If anybody who does that is invited right now to give me a commission for any challenge you can come up with. If I have to throttle it back and say, well, you're asking too much, I'll let you know. But basically, if you have an animation or painting or drawing challenge that you would like to see me unpack the problems and challenges with that particular scene or picture or painting, then just do the $3 per month thing, and I'm going to accept your commission, and sometime probably in the next couple of weeks, I will go ahead and make it happen. Again, like I said, if I could draw on this screen, I would, but basically don't do these big numbers. We don't want these. I need to go into Patreon and make these not available, probably, but it makes way more sense to look at the minimal $3 per month level. Now, the other thing about the money thing is this. I went in and I changed the GoFundMe campaign. Some hapless soul who I greatly appreciated actually gave $10, had the courage to be the first person to give. Okay, so we've got this GoFundMe campaign. Now, GoFundMe, I will say, is a little bit dumb in the fact that when you go there, all you see is this, and the description is like minimal, and you have to keep hitting, you have to keep clicking show me more in order to see the full description, which I find a little baffling. That's kind of like the baffling I get from some of the things I see in Krita. But anyway, I wanted to tell you guys that this is the thing that's changed. Okay, let me just go through this real quick, and you guys, if you're willing to suffer through it for a minute or two, you're talking about a goal here of $144,000. Well, what is that? Okay, so look, your support allows me to turn this glorified hobby into a full-time occupation. That's what we're trying to do. We're releasing 12 episodes over 3 years. All right, so if we go down here, this is kind of the explanation. I don't need $144,000 to move forward. That is the total sum that would underwrite the entire 12-episode series. In total, each 24-minute episode has a modest $12,000 budget that pays for writing, animation, editing, post-production, musical score, and voices. So 4 6-minute webisodes, like the one that you guys have seen on my channel, and I'm going to be releasing the second one very soon, 6 of those make up a full 24-minute TV episode. And that's what has a $12,000 budget. Fortunately, I have commercial media clients that pay my bills, who I need to get back to today because I have 2 websites that I need to get finished. But my hope is to pull back on commercial work and devote myself fully to creating entertainment for you. Fortunately, being self-employed, that's a balance. This is the key right here. Being self-employed, that is a balance I can adjust to on a monthly basis as webisodes get funded. So what that means is that when $2,000 comes through specifically supporting Salt and Light, that's when the trigger goes off for me, and go, we're not going to go seeking any commercial business this month. We're going to shift gears, and it's really probably the difference between a webisode taking 2 to 4 weeks versus 2 to 4 months. It's literally that big of a difference because I don't really devote all that amazingly much time to Salt and Light because, I do have a life and bills to pay. So that's the rationale. And I just wanted to review that with you guys so you guys fully understand what it is I'm trying to achieve. On the Patreon side, you're supporting me. You're supporting my YouTube channel. And what do you get in return? At this point, almost carte blanche in terms of any kind of commission that you would find encouraging or educational, right? Which means just I'm going to deconstruct any scene or painting or drawing anything that you find challenging that you wish you could do, but you either need the inspiration of seeing someone do it, or you need the education of seeing how someone does it. Either way, if you join the Patreon for $3 a month, I'm gonna give you a commission in return, and that's pretty open-ended and simple. That's fun for me. It's helpful for you. The GoFundMe is less about supporting the YouTube channel. It's more about supporting the show, right? At the end of the day, honestly, if the, what I would love to see happen, my ultimate picture would be, at the end of the day, I'll probably wind up with some better rewards on the Patreon side, and I'll probably have build to $1,000 a month type revenue stream from Patreon. On the GoFundMe side, really the truth of the matter is, I would love it if basically just a couple grand a month was coming in on the GoFundMe, so that basically I'd say, okay, I can, I still have to do a little bit of commercial work, but basically it can almost be done on the weekends and stuff if I really had to, right? And I would really be shifting my energies away from that toward just making animation full time. So that's the story. And there it is. Okay, so back to work. And Sifter, yep, good progress on the Harlequin, Maria, and Sifter. I tell you, I made the comment, but I really love your drawings. I really, really love your drawing style. You got the anatomy side of it down better than most of the people who show up here. So if you guys want to learn how to draw in an anime style, look at what Sifter's got going, because he's good at it. Okay, so where are we at? Well, last night I figured out that this legacy shot, okay, where Mel's characterization is all screwy, I realized that if I just brought in the visuals, not only do I like the acting better, but the characterization is really spot on. And so it really is just a matter of how are we going to take these visuals and marry them to the prior scene. Frankly, won't really be that hard. I just need to map out the timing of the dialogue and change his mouth so that he's not smiling. Because when he's talking to Asher, it's really more this attitude, right? He's kind of like embarrassed or feeling bad or whatever. But the other aspect of it, and we're going to go ahead and kill Blender 2.79 at this point, but the other aspect of it is when I went into the scene that I stole the better drawings from, it's this scene that was done in Blender 2.81, and I realized actually it turns out I isolated the head from the body, and I even isolated the face from the head. So there's a pretty strong case to be made for just adjusting the translations on his head and really repurposing the scene right here in Blender 2.81. So it's a bit of a tug of war for me. Here's my sense right now is that because I pretty much know Krita inside and out, and I feel like I would be doing more fumbling around if I went ahead and finished up the shot here in Blender. My sense is that probably I should stick with the Krita path. But you know what? If you guys have a strong opinion about that, feel free to speak up, and I'm willing to go the Blender direction on this shot if you guys are like demanding it. Otherwise, I think I'm probably going to stick with Krita. So I'll wait to see if anybody... The way you're approaching this shot reminds me of how Robert Valley does it, except he's using Photoshop. I'm not familiar with Robert Valley Sifter. The bottom line is that I've said forever, just from the pragmatic standpoint of having 800 shots plus throughout the 2 episodes of the show, when you're doing that level of work, and plus you consider that most animation You know, I had no idea that this head and the acting was going to work over top of this shot. But what it turns out, you know, kind of the dirty little secret that we all share in the animation space is that 99% of our work is a 3/4 view. And if you get a perfect characterization in a 3/4 view, it's probably going to turn out you can use it over and over and over and over again. Now, one thing I could do, honestly, on this shot, as I'm thinking out loud, is I could just take the disembodied head, animate it, render it out, and then bring that into Krita, just to save myself some cleanup work. But, so, and then with the grease pencil, I mean, bottom line is if you have a vector format, you saw it with the recent Luka shots. I mean, I had four Luka shots that all used the same basic drawing, and they're sort of spread throughout the show. So there, we got that shot. That is just a wide shot I did separately. So we've got that shot. So I changed the acting. You know, the acting's different, but the basic, you know, the question you're asking yourself is, why are you ever going to draw the same thing twice? Well, and there it is again. And the reason is maybe because you love drawing. You know, if you love drawing, there is a reason to draw. For me, I tell you, once I've got it right and I can use the sculpting tools to just kind of dial it in and not repeat myself, I am really much more into that. I have way more fun that way. Okay, I'll check it out, Sifter. Your vote is stick with Krita. How to color palette into Homa like Krita? That's a weird question, Goswami, because normally people would be asking the opposite. Meaning, if you want to have color control in Krita, then simply put all of your fill colors on separate layers. That's really about all there is to it. That's what Ed Tadeo does. And then if you need to go in and color correct one layer, you can just add a filter mask, you know, with a curves tool or whatever, and you could shift the hue or do whatever you want. So in Krita, the key to color control is to just do your fills, put each color on its own layer. So you've asked your question in the reverse way. And by the way, my buzzer just buzzed, so that might be the HVAC, guys. Let me see, or it might be some activity on Discord. I need to check because I am waiting to hear from the... No, just a junk call, actually. So, okay. So your question, it's difficult to Homa to make like a brown color. That I'm not going to answer. That's too basic, Goswami. I wouldn't be so harsh with everybody, but I mean, really, dude. You know, what is brown? Brown is dirty red. That's all I need to tell you. I think you can make a brown color. Hey, Soda Pop. Okay, so Goswami wants to go the Krita route, so fine, we'll go the Krita route. Okay, a couple things to note here. First thing we need to do is turn the shadows off. The cast shadow as well. So all we're dealing with is the merged group. And that shadow could easily be added later. Okay, so we have a paint layer. Oh yes, this is an erase layer. Right, so actually, those shadows, I don't mind leaving for later either. So at this point, look at the transform mask. I would say let's just bake this down. Let's merge this group, and then we're going to wind up with just a flat animation of Mel's head jumping around, and we'll go from there. It's difficult to find color into Homa. Well, okay, I understand you're serious. Okay. We'll give this 60 seconds and take this seriously. We're going to take this seriously. Okay? Boom. be, I draw a shape, and now I need a brown color to fill it with. So I fill it. Sorry, don't want to be in freehand mode. Okay, we filled it. What I said was brown is dirty red. So here's red. There's brown. Okay. So again, not trying to be snarky, but what is it you're having difficulty with? If you really want to cheat, drag an external image of your favorite anime that has the right colors in it. Okay? I'll demonstrate that and then we'll be done. Okay? So I'm just going to take, I'll go ahead and drag this in and put it behind. Okay, so now if I wanted this color to be this skin tone, all I've got to do is grab this color and then hit the R key or the color sampler. Your hotkey might be different. And just click this color. So you can cheat that way. So there, I demonstrated that. Now, is there something else that's... Okay. No need to be sorry. It was suppose a reasonable question, and now we've answered it, and we're good to go. Okay, so now, since Mel shifts to this position, and that's really where he's going to be, these keyframes can all be deleted. We don't need them. So let's put Mel back here, and we're going to assume that this is where he's going to sort of start out. Okay, so that worked. He's kind of like turning to Asher. And then what we need to do, let's go ahead and take a moment to get rid of all duplicate keys. Okay, it's unfortunate that the hotkey of left arrow, right arrow, which worked for years in Krita, doesn't work anymore. They broke it in version 5, and I have no idea why, but we can try. Let's go into settings, configure Krita, keyboard shortcuts, and let's type in the word forward. Did I spell it wrong? Forward. Okay, so this is, if you want to know why I would consider, why am I wanting to migrate away from Krita? This is such a great example of why. Okay? Because there's so many things in Krita that I find stupid. What is this action that we're trying to invoke? According to the pop-up hint, it's called forward. This is called back. Okay? If that's what the hint is, then have the brains to have the action that can be mapped to a hotkey be called that. Yeah, a little snarky about that. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, though. There are so many things in Krita that are like that, where it's like I just wag my head in disbelief. I go, "It's like you actually that stupid? Okay, you're that stupid." And you can make all the excuses in the world, but I'm sorry, stupid is stupid. Okay, so I'm looking through all the tools, and it turns out, as far as I can see, maybe I'm looking straight at it, but animation, drag frames, embed, update. So there you go. As far as I can tell, if you can actually believe this, there's nothing in the hotkey list called forward or back. So basically, in Krita 5, it appears to be utterly impossible to map a hotkey to the simple action of going forward and backward on your timeline one frame at a time. Right? And if you're a person who doesn't look at that and go, really? Seriously, you're joking, right? That's not even true. You're just making that up because that's so ridiculous that it can't be true. Yep, it's true. And that's precisely the type of thing I'm talking about. Because it really freaking slows you down. So I'm not a clicker. I totally respect all those Mac people who, and I only say that with a minimum of snark. Going back, 25, 30 years. Actually, 30 years plus. I always found I wasn't real enamored with. I mean, it's great to be able to click, but I never really loved an environment where there is no other option but to click, which is what you pretty much had, from days of yore with the Macintosh, right? Okay, so what I'm doing here is just erasing his mouth, because the mouth shapes are totally wrong, and that should be gotten rid of. That's a duplicate. Okay, and now, if you can believe this, guys, now the arrows work. Okay. So you're going, wait. So what you're saying is you have hotkeys that literally don't work at all, and then out of the blue for no apparent reason start working. And what you're saying is that that's the normal behavior. That's like completely the usual case with Krita 5. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Totally normal. So, there you go. It's like, if my goal is to be snarky, I gotta tell you, Krita makes my job easy. Okay, what do we have here? We've got actually a couple poses that... So that's really a duplicate where there was a little bit of color fixing in his hair that we can always redo if we need to. So we've got this pose. Now I want to see if there's any duplicates that I'm missing. So he's kind of in the down position, and then there's a bounce out of it into the up position. And is this the same as one of these? I think this is the same as this. Yep. So this can be deleted. And this actually looks to be the same as... He's got this little bounce out of it. And they're not quite the same. So I'm going to take this and move it back here so that we get this nice smooth flow from here up. I reversed it. I'm sorry, I did this in the wrong order. So there we go. So yeah, I mean, I totally, you know what, when I get a little snarky, I totally could not blame people for just like leaving. Like, how can you be like so negative, right? I totally, believe me, I get it. I would love for it not to be as like crazy as it is. I would love for it not to be as crazy as it is. I'm serious. Okay, so that's the basic DNA, or the basic raw material we have to work with here. As far as his mouth goes, so right now, here's another kind of example. I click here on the first frame, and it doesn't actually jump to the first frame. So I have to go up here and drag it. To which you say, really? I mean, come on, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it's not a big deal, except that when you do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times a day, and you have hotkeys in the program that basically just flip a coin. Maybe they'll work, and then maybe they won't. What do you do with that? What do you do with that, people? I find it rather confusing. Okay, so we've got the raw material here. We're going to have to get the acting figured out. We can always refer to the original shot for that. Oh my gosh, that characterization was all wrong. But basically, he just says his line of dialogue and then says, see, there was this girl And why did that repeat? Let me see here. So I would say, for our purposes, let's take this out. Okay, my phone just buzzed me, so it could be the HVAC guys. Let's find out. Doesn't look like it. By gum. Oh, that's Amar on Discord. So just flagging it for you guys. Apparently Amar's got some stuff he's posted on Discord updates. Okay. So this feels pretty good. And now we can turn this on. And obviously this doesn't look as good because it doesn't have all the shadows and stuff, but okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to actually going to go ahead and group this and add an erase layer. Well, I don't want to add an erase layer because it's animated, so I really need to go in and do some cleanup. I'm going to basically clean off the, I'm going to disembody the head. So again, you could have done this in Blender, but let's turn all this off, and then I think maybe what I'll do is grab continuous or contiguous selection here. Really? I grabbed the wrong tool. That's on me, friends. That's on me. Okay. So that'll be a little easier than trying to clean up the all the color. In other words, it'll be easier to clean up just the lines. So this will take a couple minutes. Let's go into race mode, friends. This is where you're just doing grunt work. And you say, well, how long is this really going to take? Alright. B key, check my brush, go here, G key, hit the E key, so we're in erase mode. And now what we're going to do, the color on the freehand path tool does not matter. Hang on, little weirded out here. Oh, because the selection, sorry. I forgot my little, I mentioned this yesterday. If you have any selection in Krita, and this makes perfect sense, this is not a criticism. If there's any selection, then any drawing or anything you try to do is only going to actually work within the area that's selected. So anyway, like I said, what we're going to do now is we're going to disembody this boy. We are going to remove his body. And, you know, if we get a little bit of other stuff we sort of have to fix later. Well, you know, the funny thing about this actually is I'm probably being a little stupid here because I mean, look at it. This is one drawing. So I'm really being kind of dumb here. This is more, this characterization is more correct. So here's what we really should be doing here. Boom. Get rid of all of it. Okay. Why did I do that? Well, let's hit the A key and flip it. And now what we're going to do, honestly, we could do this with a transform mask. Probably not the worst idea I've ever had. It might be fun to try. Okay? If you're wondering what I'm talking about, if you want to see what you can do with Krita, this is where we're going to kind of do it. Okay? So we're going to add a transform mask. And now what we want to do is Mel has to sort of look down, a little bit downtrodden. Oh, geez, Asher, I'm sorry. And then he turns to Asher, which I think he may do the turn before he says, I'm sorry. So I think he looks down. He looks down. Oh, geez, Asher. Turns to Asher. I'm sorry. And then he kind of looks away again. You know, it's just that there was this girl, and when he says this girl, is his, that's when his thumb goes up. That's this. And so at this point, he would be looking at Asher, and then he's going to have a big frenetic reaction where he says, well, nothing like that, right? Because he's embarrassed. Okay, why would you do it this way? Well, one of the reasons you do it this way is that by using the transform mask, we're now actually getting some procedural benefit here in Krita, where whatever we do in animating his head, if we update the drawing, the one drawing of his head, all the animation will still prevail. So, let's do that. When I use the transform mask, what I do is I add a single animation key, and that's it. Okay? Then I hit the transform tool. And by the way, we should save our work. Okay. The transform mask will retain its center from, you know, you don't have to keep resetting the center. That is one of the improvements in Krita 5. So now what I'm going to do, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to undo that. I don't like that because I feel like this really needs to actually be more accurately centered. Probably there. Okay, so now we'll take this first key and just give him a couple frames to settle into it. And so, and then later on what we'll do is we'll draw over it. We'll do the eye blinks, you know, we'll do a little bit of stretch on his chin before he flips direction, things like that. So let's just think about the acting system. Geez, Asher, I'm sorry. So he would shrug his shoulders. So I'm thinking shrug, turn. Okay. So right here, I'm going to say, oh, it put a key in for me. Well, that's okay. What I'm going to do is duplicate this key. Otherwise, it's going to transition. Like if I flip it, you're going to see it. It's going to get real ugly because it's going to transition over all these frames from this pose to the flipped position. So watch this. This is actually going to be quite nice acting, I think. Okay, so Mel's like, geez, Asher, I'm sorry. Okay, I want to push this out just a little bit because I want to leave some room for that shrug. Shrug. Okay, so we'll get it. Ooh, that's too slow. That looks stupid. That looks stupid. So, like, there's another example of kind of what I've been talking about a bit. And Krita made a, you know, I'm dragging frames around here, and Krita made a guess. For some reason, Krita said, well, you must want to select this range right here. Well, there's a consequence to that, which is that if I hit play, it's going to loop on this area. I don't know of anything that I did that would suggest that that was my intent, and that's another thing I keep bumping into a lot with Krita 5, is it makes a lot of little guesses, especially in the animation timeline. Basically, it almost always guesses wrong. And I've seen right here, as you can see, if I click on these cells, it jumps to that frame, right? Okay, that makes sense. Well, the problem is that doesn't work at least half the time. You click and it just doesn't go. You go, really? What do you do with that? It's almost creepy, actually. You know, a software tool that where you really don't know what it's going to do. Okay? That is weird. You know, that is weird. Okay, now I think I'd like to have him kind of lean. Yeah, move a little more towards Asher. You know, and again, that's not to take anything away from the cool things that it does do. Okay, now the manipulation of keyframes within the the transform mask animation keyframes do not behave the way all other animation keyframes behave. There's a couple ways they do, like the control drag right there. But if I hit Control Shift X, as you can see, it does not delete the keyframe. So there's quite a bit of it is, I would say, the animation timeline manipulation of transform mask keys is 70% not the same as editing any other type of animation keys. So it's a little confusing. Okay, so I made a duplicate, and now I want to have him go up a little bit. Watch this. Okay, and now down a little bit. Flip. Come on. And then settle. So you have to just imagine his body's there, right? I'm sorry, Asher shrugged. It's just that, well, there was this girl. Okay. This is a little busy and it looks a little mechanical. The easing is probably not snappy enough. Right there, I clicked here, it didn't go. And there it didn't go again. So will it or won't it? It's just a mystery. It's a crapshoot. Take a guess and hope. Shrug. Okay, I think for my own purposes here, what I'd like to do is smack in a pencil test on top of this to just so we kind of get our bearings here on what's supposed to be happening. So I guess we'll put this underneath Mel. Oops, that's not what I meant to do right there. This will be under there, and we'll insert an animation key. And we just want to kind of loosely sketch. Okay. Now I'm gonna redraw this. I'm really just trying to find the attitude here. And now my suspicion is we can put that back there. bloom. A key, liquefy. This is just for reference purposes. That was horrible. That was horrible. That's okay though. Let's put that there. Smack this back over there. There we go. That's what we're trying to do. Let's turn on the skins. So, like I said, the idea here is just to give myself a guide. His body is still oriented in this direction. So he's not doing a full body turn. I'm looking at the chat. I always like it when you guys are talking amongst yourselves and having a good time. Shoulder. Not sure I'm doing the greatest job here. Cut myself a little slack because it is supposed to be just a guide. That did not work. Let me go back. See, this is where I'm just gonna, when in doubt, sometimes it's better to just start over. This would be pretty much a sculpting job. Again, the arrow keys have quit working. And now they do work. Okay, so here probably that will help. And actually, having done that, I almost wonder if the shrug should be here, right between those two keys. Yeah, see, I like that better. Okay. I'm sorry, Asher. Let's just... I'm not sure I do like that better, come to think of it. Well, that's what we do. We experiment. What's jolting me is the turn of the head. I would say, for now, you have to do cut keyframes if you want to get rid of them. And by the way, notably, watch this. Cut keyframes. See that? It doesn't actually work. I know. You're going, wait. You're joking, right? You're kidding. That's not real, is it? Are you suggesting that in Krita 5 you can put animation keyframes on a transform mask that can never be gotten rid of? Sort of. If you go into the animation curves, you can actually go through one parameter at a time, and it doesn't do you any good to hit the delete key. Okay? So again, I'm showing this as an example of, if anybody's wondering why I'm really kind of wishing we could migrate away from Krita, this is a big part of it. You have to click. Okay? Can't hit, believe it or not, you cannot hit delete. You have to click. And then when you get this parameter here, you actually have a bunch of parameters that are all stacked together, because it sets an animation key like a global key in Tahoma. It sets key for everything. And there really is no way of seeing what you've grabbed. It doesn't seem to do any good to click these over here either. Okay? And there is no such thing as a lasso. Okay? So now you could do that, which is obviously a bizarre result. But you can't lasso them. So what I'm having to do here is actually just click. I have no idea what I grabbed. And then drag it up so that I can just see the darn thing. And then now I hit the minus key to get rid of that animation key just a moment ago. And it actually appears that the whole program has frozen. Oh, there you go. It may have crashed. So... So if anybody's wondering why I'm a little down on Krita 5, despite all the amazing new features, you're just seeing it. I mean, I'm just doing normal work, not trying to cause trouble, and this is what you get. This kind of wacky stuff is normal for Krita 5, and it has crashed. It's done. It's not gonna rise out of the ashes of this mess. So again, I mean, you got this functionality that's really cool, the ability to animate animation keyframes, but be aware, number one, it doesn't actually work a lot of the time. Number two, it may well cause the program to crash. And number three, the tools and the hotkeys are inconsistent to the point where you would write your grandmother a letter and tell her all about it, because you know she's going to crack up laughing and not believe you. She's going to go, no, it can't be that. You know, nobody's that dumb, kind of thing. And you go, nope, Grandma, it's true. This is how the program works. This is the program on which I've staked my life, my career. I've staked my life on this program. So it's waiting for the operation to complete. Who knows what it's doing? Okay, so meanwhile, back in Blender land, we've got a head and a face here. And we have a body that we could maybe do some editing on while we wait for Krita decide what it's going to do, because Krita's locked, baby. Krita's locked. Nothing in the interface works. It looks like it's actually thinking. Okay, so that's kind of impressive. It appears that what happened was it took Krita about 3 minutes to decide if you change one of these rotation parameters, what does that actually do in terms of how it changes your image? Well, that's a fair question. Which parameter do we have selected? I have no idea. Is it the rotation parameter? As you can see, this is lit up white. Krita's thinking, because Krita's got to figure out, well, if you actually change the value of this either rotation or scale parameter, we don't know what parameter it is. We have no idea. Well, what does that do to the image? Well, Krita's got to calculate that. So that's what it's doing right now. As you can see, there is a bit of a progress bar here. So the interesting thing about I will say this in terms of sort of preserving my relationship with Krita. This is where I've arrived, and it's a bit of a conundrum. Is that the transform masks, animating them like I'm doing here, as you can see, is a process fraught with risk. Okay, it's an amazing feature that actually works kind of well if you use it really simply. But when you're a creative person who says, boy, I'm going to use this tool the way that you can use it, the way it, I'm going to unleash the creativity that such a tool awakens. Well, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to do that, because what you'll see is a lot of this type of thing right here. So where I've landed with Krita is that in terms of the hotkeys being reliable and that sort of thing, the interactive workflow of Krita 4 is definitely better, is more reliable, yada, yada, yada. But the features, not so much the animated transform masks. I mean, at this point, I'm going to just delete the transform mask because I'm regretting the choice of using that cool new feature. So the transform masks have been in Krita for a long time, and you can even use tools like Liquify with it, but you can't animate them. So what it does is it does a modification, either a distortion with Liquify, or it takes your whole layer and just moves the whole thing, animation keys and all, to a new size, new rotation. That aspect of the transform mask works very well. There's no problem. And I've been using it a lot. It's the way that you would take a whole group like this and be able to take the whole kit and caboodle with all its animation keys and just reframe it, for example. Something like that. For that purpose, the transform masks work great. See? Well, I say they work great, but actually, where did the animation of his head go? Oh, that's the body. Well, I guess I did just have it. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, my bad. I just had a single frame. So for that purpose, they work fine, and they worked fine in Krita 4. So it's really the new aspect of the transform mask, which is the keyframe animation, which is, if all you're going to do is move something across the screen, it works pretty well. But once you start adding multiple keys and actually have to go in and edit it, I would say that the ability to do what you're trying to do is far, far worse than what we've been able to do in Blender since 1999. I'm not joking. That's not a snarky statement. That's not an exaggeration. The kinds of things the transform mask is designed to do, Blender did 10 times better, more reliably, less buggily 22 years ago. So there's really kind of nothing new about the transform mask that's actually compelling. If that's what you want Krita 5 for, I strongly recommend you go over to Tahoma. Now, what is Krita cool about? What is good in Krita 5? Well, pretty much the same stuff that was there in Krita 4. Stuff like that. Liquify is great. The thing is, it's better in Blender, right? The same thing, the sculpting in Blender is way better because you don't lose resolution. If you look real close, do this a few times, what you'll see is the lines start to fuzz out in a big way. And that's understandable because they got to map all those pixels to, new locations where they're occupying space a little differently, right? So it is any program like TV Paint or whatever that does that type of a distortion, you're going to get that. You're going to get some blurring of your lines, and you get the same thing in Tahoma when you use the selection tool and then hit Control so you can actually squish it around in a different shape. So I don't know if you guys find this useful, educationally speaking here, but honestly, this is really good information from the trenches if you're actually trying to get real work done, because you are going to bump into it. So Let me just think about what I'm doing here and catch my breath here for a second. I don't think this is helping me. I'm just going to get rid of it. I want to kind of just keep working fast here. One other thing to consider is the idea of not actually having him turn his... Now, see, here's the thing. This is actually... Okay, so here's the reason why you do want to use a transform mask. This is... I forgot about this, unfortunately. Gosh, I gotta tell you guys, I think this... Unfortunately, Goswami, I think this shot is going to... We're going to wind up over in Blender. I'm pretty sure I can see it coming. Because here's the problem. I want to basically roll my own tween, okay? So what I'm saying is I want to go ahead and rotate his head, and then I'll sort of figure out the tween position. So that's fine. You can do that. When I use the transform tool, watch what happens. So I set the center of it, right? So that's fine. That's all working good. Now we come back here and we want to find the center point. See what it did? It moved the transform center back to the center of the transform tool. Okay, so this is what I said about Krita many months before Krita 5 ever came out. I said if the developers would simply add to Krita 4 the ability for every tool to just remember its last settings, all of the animation problems in Krita would be solved like that, instantly. Because what you have here is you have a repeatable motion. You have the ability to roll your own tween. But now you've got to move the center point back here. See, the transform mask remembers its center point. And that's a good thing. That was an improvement. But yeah, I made this point months ago, is that if Krita would simply remember its settings, then you could say, you could grab your scene and you could use a transform mask and move it a few pixels to the right, for example, and then just go to the next frame and repeat that action, and now you've got the ability to pan your camera. You're having to still roll your own tweens, but at least you can do it. And it's kind of reliable, too. Okay, that feels pretty good. So I think what I should do, I'm a little nervous about not having the body in there because I don't want to really like screw it up. But the thing is, I don't know that I'm, and I'm just thinking out loud here, guys, so kind of ignore me, right? I'm just thinking out loud. I'm going to go ahead and turn the skins back on. And so what I'm thinking out loud about is how this the dynamics of his body motion are really kind of important here, and I'm wanting to slow everything down. I can reuse his head, that's fine, but I'm really kind of wanting to slow everything down and think about the acting here. So I'm going to do a little bit more complete or accurate drawing in order to, I've got to get in the alpha zone here where I'm seeing it in my head, what I'm trying to do here in terms of motion. And see, yeah. So again, yeah, today the goal was not to have a snark session on Krita, that's for sure. But I am glad that you guys have been able to see kind of in living color where the things I've been bumping into are making me more and more convinced that migrating over to Blender, basically 2.8 series, I think is where I'll be. Makes a lot of sense. The stuff I looked into today as far as the for background paintings is basically what's at issue is, and of course you could still use Krita for painting, duh. But on the animation side of things, I seem to be moving more and more back into my old days, which is in the Blender camp. I remember when I first started learning Blender, it was really difficult, actually. It took about a month where I would dive into it, really work with it, and then get kind of frustrated and say, this software drives me nuts, and quit. And then a couple days later, I'd sort of get the itch a couple days later. I'd say, by golly, I'm going to conquer this, And then I'd go back, and I'd sort of overcome some things and learn some more. And, it took about a month. And then all of a sudden I found I was able to start getting stuff done. This was back in, 1999. Long time ago. Long time ago. So this is I'm using Liquify because this is what I would be doing in Blender too. I'd be I'm just trying to, there we go. I'm just trying to drag the strokes around just to try to find the characterization, try to find the attitude. I'm trying to, some people would say, quite rightly, well, why don't you just redraw it? And I gotta say, when it comes to what I'm doing here, finding the characterization, I get a lot of mileage out of sculpting. Now that looks good. So it turns out, I see that's what I was doing wrong. It turns out that really Mel needed to be almost his body more in a profile kind of situation. That actually is starting to look good. Okay. We're getting somewhere. Alright. Tighten it up now just so I'm kind of firm on what I'm trying to do. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so now can this work? The question really is this pose right here. What would happen with the body? And I'll try doing it sculpting wise, but I might have to just go ahead and scribble it out and redraw it. But I just want to kind of feel here with sculpting what I think would happen, right? With the weight of his body, with the curvature. I feel like maybe his chest would sink a little bit. This is cool. I like doing this stuff. This is fun. And then if I can find it, then tweening from one to the other should be pretty easy. Okay, and oh, now that's a disaster. I got to hit undo a bunch of times. That's my fault. On this layer, I did not add a keyframe, so that means when I went to here and sculpted it, all I was doing was changing the prior drawing. So that's my fault. But that's okay. Well, this is what happens too when you work with this stuff. So now what I'm doing is I'm going, okay, we see his head, the weight of his head fall. It seems like his shoulder would pull back a little bit. I'm just kind of trying to this is where sculpting is nice, because see, you can actually feel the motion. It actually feels like the character's alive a little bit, You say, well, what would happen? Okay, this changed volume. Now, right there, Krita, smack Krita upside the head, because the Liquify tool just switched back to its prior size, which is one of the things I've been telling you guys. Be aware, when you use the Liquify tool, you're going to be going, this tool is so amazing, and then you're going to get it dialed in just how you like it, and then you're going to click and do one other thing, and when you come back to it, it's going to switch back to the default, and you're going to want to scream. Okay, that's pretty good. So what I was seeing there a minute ago was that, and there it switched back again, stupid thing. Suffice to say that the sculpting tools in Blender don't do that. So yes, it is a comparison. It is a comparison between Krita and Blender at this point for me. And Krita's head is increasingly every day on the chopping block. On the chopping block, friends. Okay, that's not too bad. Technically, that should probably be under there, but... Okay, so then how do we get from here to there? Right? This is going to be a little tricky. This is where having the... And now the size... Now the size is big again. That's weird. Maybe it remembers... this is weird. Maybe it remembers based on what frame you're on. No, that doesn't seem to be the case. Jeez, that would be extremely bizarre, but it would actually be useful. So I better turn on the skins, I think. It's hard to see them, honestly, and we need to go forward. So I'm going forward 1 frame, and I'm going to start. I basically have to move it out and then move it back so I can sort of find the spot. Okay. That's not too bad. For this kind of stuff, Krita's pretty good. I mean, honestly, friends, the truth is I want to love it. I want to love it, not be mad at Krita. I really, really do. Okay, the shoulder didn't come up though, and now this size change is becoming a little bit punitive. Ah, did it again. I have to resize it every single time I change frames. So at this point, I'm sure there's no mystery about why. Look at that. See, it just keeps switching back. I'll bet you if I change it here, it'll stay. I would be willing to bet. Watch. Yep. See, I knew it. So you say, well, okay, so why would that be a little disturbing? Because what it means is that there's a disconnect between this functionality of shift drag. When you do this, you are not actually doing this. That's creepy. That violates one of the fundamental rules of software development. DRY, dry, do not repeat yourself. When you have the same functionality happening in 2 different places in your code, it is axiomatic and inescapable that you will introduce inconsistencies, bugs, erratic behavior. Every time, there are no exceptions. No one ever gets away with it. And I mean, nobody. You never get away with that. And it's been evident for literally years, actually. It's been evident that Krita's code is replete with spaghetti. It really is, unfortunately. But, what are you going to do? You still can get work done, you know? So there is that to point out. Okay, so let's just spin on this little sequence here. Oh, geez, Asher. Okay, so now what I was going to consider doing was, if we're going to be able to get the body action blocked in like this, why not go ahead and start animating on the face and just, you know, pound it into shape. I'm not going to do the lip sync. But I would say right here, let's put in a blink, G key. Let's go ahead and put an eye blink in there. And then B key. Just tighten up his eyelids a bit. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to go ahead and animate straight ahead. Wow. That's amazing. That blink was pretty subtle, wasn't it? Okay, so I'm sorry, Asher. Okay, so basically, right there in this layer, I would say A key, liquefy. Now we're going to make it bigger. And I'm going to put the shrug back in now. Go forward, I would say 2 frames. Keep it simple. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, I'm going to take a break and we'll be back in a bit. I'm going to turn my microphone off, take a short break, and continue, I think, just animating straight ahead. So, thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll be back in a bit. And I am back, and let's see here. I see Maria's. I was stuck. Never tried animating Krita yet. I don't recommend it at this point, unless you're just doing. If you're doing the Ed Tadeo thing where he almost always does everything frame by frame, then it works pretty darn well. And frankly, everything about that worked pretty well in Krita 4. You might ask, why not just go back to Krita 4? Because I do have Krita 4 on my system. The main reason is that there are issues that have to do with the pixel buffers that were really spotty until Krita 5, especially if you use transform masks, where if you move things around the screen, Krita would get confused. But I do have a recommendation for that. Okay, guys, I just looked at the chat and saw that my microphone was still off. Doesn't matter. You guys didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. Right there, you can see that I've clicked back here, and Krita keeps playing from here, so. Anyway, I just duplicated these frames and then mirrored them. And hey, Darren, thanks for the yoo-hoo. No big deal. I don't know that it's necessarily all that enriching. You see how even right there, I actually clicked on the playhead. Now if I click on the playhead and drag it back, now it goes back to the beginning. But right there, clicking here doesn't work. So if it's playing from there, I click from here, doesn't work. I click from here, doesn't work. Can't get Krita to go back to until it does. Yeah. Like I said, it's a mess. It's a code disaster. And that's a big problem because it is such a big code base that cleaning it up. Okay, so now I've got a call coming through. I got to see if this is Dave here.
Hi, this is Josh with Northeast Mechanical.
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah, the HVAC guy's here. So the furnace is actually not working at all. It's not putting out heat. So, and he's going to be here in 5 minutes. So I'm going to have to wrap this up today. So I think I'll wrap up by saying this. Everything I've done in Krita in the last at least hour would have been accomplished in Blender, I am really sure, in about 15 minutes at most. Okay, so the question is, well, what is it that is problematic here in Blender? The thing I think I see coming with Blender is I need to develop a workflow that involves I need to really be thinking about, like when I draw the body, for example, as I'm working. The good news is that I've figured out how to very instantly toggle between draw mode, sculpt mode. I can hit the tab key and actually go into edit mode. So the drawing and inking workflow considerations are solved. So going to Blender 2.8 and having all the benefits that go with that are pretty well in place, and so I do expect to be migrating away from 2.79 pretty soon. What I have to be careful about going forward is things like when what I need to do is create like utility layers for like putting in blue lines to create barriers, so that like in a case like this, it would really make sense to have his body and his arm on two different layers so they could then be animated separately. And the way to do that would be to just, when I'm going from the pencil test to ink, really be thinking about what layer I'm putting things on that ultimately are going to have to be maybe filled and animated separately. So that there's an aspect to that I kind of need to figure out. The other thing with Blender is there really isn't a great way to like grab a piece. Let me see here. Okay, there's the body. I'm in edit mode. Nope, I'm in object mode. Sorry, guys. So to be able to take that and let's say we separate the points. Okay. Now that's a little problematic. So because it's not a pixel-based program, you don't really have a great way to just cut pieces out and sort of then fill them back together. You can kind of do it, but there's that aspect of working with paint that I still have to sort of figure out. But we'll get there. We will get there. So I'm just hitting undo a bunch of times to kind of get back to where I was when I started. I may have run out of undos. So, but that's no big deal. I'll just hit control and erase those extra squiggly lines. So that's it. The furnace guy will be here shortly. So with that, I am going to sign off. And thanks for hanging out. As you guys know, there will be more later.